The desert sun burned like a branding iron against my weathered skin, the kind of heat that makes a man question his choices. My name is Silas Crow, once a cattle rancher who drove herds across this godforsaken land, now a gunslinger with more blood on my hands than I care to count. My chest throbbed, each breath a reminder of the bullet lodged there, courtesy of the Morrison gang's sharpshooter. 3 hours ago, I'd taken down 2 of them in a hail of lead, but the third had gotten the better of me. The wound was a slow bleed, the kind that promises death but takes its time, letting you stew in your regrets. I figured this was how it'd end, alone, bleeding out in the wasteland, with nothing but the vultures to mourn me. Then I heard it. A cry, sharp and desperate, slicing through the silence of the dawn like a knife through rawhide. At first, I thought it was my mind playing tricks, the way it does when death's knocking. A baby? Out here? Men like me don't hear babies crying in the middle of nowhere. But it came again, that wail, pure and piercing, pulling at something deep inside me I'd long buried. I staggered toward the sound, my boots dragging through the dust, each step sending fire through my ribs. My vision blurred, but I pushed on, driven by something I couldn't name. Maybe it was instinct, the same one that used to guide me when a calf went missing from the herd. Maybe it was something more. Around a cluster of weathered rocks, I saw it. A pine coffin, small, child-sized, sitting alone in the vast emptiness of the desert. The crying grew louder, unmistakable now, coming from inside. My knees buckled, and I fell beside it, the pain in my chest a distant second to the shock of what I was seeing. A coffin? Out here? The lid was ajar, and through the gap I caught the flicker of movement. A tiny fist, flailing against the wood. My trembling hands, stained with years of blood and toil, reached for the lid. I lifted it, and my heart, battered as it was, nearly stopped. There he was, a baby boy, maybe 6 months old, wrapped in a dirty blanket. His face was red from crying, his little chest heaving with effort, but he was alive, very much alive. His dark eyes locked onto mine, and for a moment, the crying stopped. Those eyes, they weren't just a child's. They were too wise, too knowing, like they'd seen more of the world than I had in my 37 years. I stared, frozen, until my gaze drifted to the inside of the coffin lid. There, carved into the wood with crude, deliberate letters, was my name, Silas Crow. The sight hit me like a stampede, turning my blood to ice. Someone had put this baby in a coffin meant for me. Someone knew I'd be here, bleeding out on this trail, and they wanted me to find him. I ain't never held a child before, never wanted to. Hands like mine, calloused from roping cattle and pulling triggers, didn't deserve to touch something so pure. But as the baby's cries grew weaker, I felt something crack inside me, deeper than the bullet wound. This child would die out here, just like me, if I didn't act. 2 lives, hanging by a thread in the middle of this merciless desert, brought together by some twisted game I didn't yet understand. My hands shook as I reached into the coffin, lifting the boy out. He was lighter than a newborn calf, fragile in a way that made my chest ache. His tiny fingers grasped at my vest, and for the first time in years, I felt something other than the weight of my sins. It wasn't just warmth spreading through my shirt. It was purpose, something I'd forgotten existed. I cradled him against me, his cries quieting as if he knew I was his only chance. But who had done this? Who knew my name, my route, my every move? Why leave a baby to die in a coffin marked for me? The questions burned as fierce as the sun climbing higher, casting long shadows across the sand. I knew one thing for certain: someone was playing with my life, and this innocent child was at the center of it all. His grip on my vest was strong for something so small, stronger than some men I'd seen face death. I looked down at him, his dark eyes staring back, and I swore I'd keep him alive, even if it was the last thing I did. My horse Thunder stood 30 yards off, ears twitching nervously but loyal as ever. He'd carried me through 6 years of gunfights, back when I traded cattle trails for blood trails. Now he'd have to carry me and this boy. I stumbled toward him, the baby in my left arm, each step a battle against the pain tearing through my chest. Blood still seeped from the wound, soaking my shirt, but I hauled myself into the saddle. The boy stayed quiet now, his eyes fixed on me, like he was judging whether I was worth trusting. I wasn't sure myself. As thunder started toward town, my mind raced. Millbrook was 8 miles east, too far for a man leaking life with every heartbeat. But there was the old Hendricks place, abandoned since cholera took the family 3 years back. It was closer, maybe a mile or two. If I could make it there, I might find supplies, maybe answers about who set this trap. The baby made soft sounds, not crying but not content either. I looked down and realized he was hungry. Of course he was. Whoever left him in that coffin hadn't cared if he starved. The thought hit me like a kick from a steer. The coffin wasn't just a grave, it was bait. Someone knew I'd be riding this trail after tangling with the Morrison gang. They knew I'd hear the crying, find the boy, and be forced to act. My grip on consciousness slipped as thunder stumbled over a rock. The blood loss was catching up faster than I'd hoped. I pressed my hand against the wound, but it was like trying to hold back a river. The baby's eyes never left me, as if he sensed we were both running out of time. Then I saw it. Smoke rising in the distance, not from the Hendricks place, but somewhere close. Someone was waiting. My free hand moved to my gun, but the effort sent a jolt of pain through me. If this was a trap, I was riding right into it, a dying man with a helpless child in my arms. But turning back meant death for us both. The desert sun was climbing, and without water, the boy wouldn't last 2 hours. I had maybe 4, less with the extra weight. As thunder crested a small hill, the Hendricks place came into view. A woman in a faded blue dress tended a fire outside the old cabin. She looked up, and my blood ran cold. Elena Vasquez. I knew that face. 2 years ago in Tombstone, I'd killed her husband, Carlos, over a $20 card game. He'd been cheating, but I knew he was just trying to feed his family. Didn't matter. I'd pulled the trigger anyway. Elena had sworn over his grave that she'd make me pay for leaving her children fatherless. Now, here she was, in the middle of nowhere, with a fire burning and supplies laid out like she'd been expecting me. The baby stirred in my arms as thunder slowed to a stop. Elena stood, her hands empty but her eyes dark with something worse than hatred. "Silas Crow," she said, her voice cutting through the desert air like a whip. "Right on time." "Elena," I rasped, my throat dry as the sand. "You're the one who left the baby." "My grandson," she said, her voice steady. "Miguel's boy. Born 3 months ago." The pieces clicked together like a loaded chamber. Miguel Vasquez, her son, the hothead riding with the Morrison gang, the third shooter who'd put this bullet in my chest. "Your boy tried to kill me this morning," I said, adjusting my grip on the baby. "And you killed his father. Seems fair." Elena stepped closer, her hand moving behind her back. I tensed, knowing I was too weak to draw fast enough. "The coffin," I said, piecing it together. "You carved my name in it." "Where dead men belong," she spat. "Miguel couldn't kill you clean, so I thought I'd let you choose. Die alone or die knowing you saved a child whose father you murdered." The baby, Diego she called him, made a soft sound, and for a moment Elena's mask of vengeance cracked. I saw it then, the grandmother's love beneath the widow's hate. "But here's what my boy didn't know," she continued, her hand still hidden. "That baby's sick. Been sick since birth. Needs medicine we can't afford. Medicine that costs more than we'll ever have." I understood now. This wasn't just revenge. It was desperation. "You want my money," I said. "I want you dead," she corrected, her voice sharp as a blade. "But I'll settle for your money and your life insurance policy. Word is you've got a $2,000 bounty plus whatever you're carrying." Diego's breathing grew shallow, his tiny body trembling in my arms. She wasn't lying about the sickness. "A heart condition," she said, "needing surgery back east. More money than most folks see in a lifetime." I had $4,000 in my saddlebags, blood money from years of bounties and gunfights, money that had never done anyone any good. "You can have it all," I told her, my voice quieter than it had been in years. "But you let me take him to a doctor first." Her hand emerged, holding an old Navy Colt, her father's gun, if I remembered right. "You think I'm fool enough to trust the man who murdered my husband?" "I'm dying anyway," I said, nodding at the blood seeping through my shirt. "Got maybe 2 hours left. 3 if I'm lucky. But this baby could live if we stop wasting time." Elena's gun wavered, her eyes flickering between me and Diego. The boy's breathing was weaker now, his lips tinged blue. I felt panic rising, sharp and unfamiliar. I'd faced death 100 times, but this was different. This child was slipping away, and I couldn't let it happen. "How long does he have?" I asked. "Weeks," she said, her voice breaking. "Maybe days without proper care." "Then we go to Millbrook," I said. "Doc Harper's got supplies. Might stabilize him long enough for Phoenix." Her gun stayed on me, but her finger eased off the trigger. "Miguel's waiting in Millbrook," she said. "He sees you with his boy. He'll shoot you on sight." "Then you ride with us and make sure he doesn't." She laughed, bitter as the desert wind. "You want me to save the man who killed my husband?" "I want you to save your grandson." Diego's breathing hitched, his lips bluer now, his body going limp. "He's getting worse," I said, urgency cutting through my pain. "We need to move now." Elena saw it too. Her gun lowered as she stepped forward, reaching for Diego. As her hands touched him, his breathing steadied slightly, like her touch gave him strength to fight a little longer. "There's a wagon behind the cabin," she said, her voice thick with unshed tears. "Miguel brought supplies, thinking we'd need them after—" "Get it hitched," I said, fast. But then I heard it, hoofbeats, hard and fast, coming from behind. Miguel wasn't in Millbrook, he was here, with friends. 3 riders crested the ridge, dust trailing like a storm. Miguel rode in front, his face twisted with rage. The 2 flanking him were Morrison gang survivors, Pete and Jake, men who'd kill for $1 and sleep soundly after. Elena froze, halfway to the wagon. "Miguel, no," she shouted, but her voice was drowned by the thunder of hooves. I had seconds to decide. Draw my gun one-handed and likely miss, hand Diego to Elena and fight, risking the boy in the crossfire? Or do something no gunslinger ever does, surrender. "Elena," I called, "take him." She rushed back as the riders roared into the clearing. I handed Diego to her, his breathing so faint I feared we were too late. Miguel's horse skidded to a stop, his gun already drawn. "Get away from him, Mama!" he shouted. "Get away from that baby killer!" "Miguel, stop!" Elena stepped between us, Diego cradled tight. "He's trying to help." "Help?" Miguel's voice cracked. "He killed Papa. He's the reason Diego's dying." Pete Morrison spoke up, his gun trained on me. "Boy's right. Crow's got a $2,000 bounty. We finish him, collect the money, everybody wins." "Except Diego," I said, my hands raised. "Your boy needs a doctor in Phoenix. Kill me now, you'll never have enough money to save him." Miguel's gun wavered. Elena clutched Diego tighter, his breathing erratic. "Miguel, listen to him," she whispered. "Diego's getting worse." The standoff stretched, every second ticking away Diego's life. Pete spat in the dust. "Enough talking. We came for a bounty, not a sob story." But Jake Morrison was staring at Diego, his expression softening. "Pete," he said, "that baby looks real sick." "So what?" Pete snapped. "I got a kid too," Jake said, his voice low. "Back in Colorado." That was my chance. "Then you know what it's like," I said to Jake. "Watching your child suffer, helpless to stop it." Pete's patience broke. "Jake, what's wrong with you?" His gun swung toward his cousin, but before he could fire, Jake shot first, putting a bullet in Pete's shoulder. Pete spun to the ground, cursing. "I got a kid too," Jake repeated, his smoking gun steady. Miguel holstered his weapon and took Diego from Elena. "He's still breathing," he said, voice breaking. "Barely." Elena ran for the wagon. "It's ready," she called. But Pete, despite his wound, reached for his gun. I drew mine with the last of my strength, firing a shot into the dirt near his hand. "Next one won't miss," I said, though the effort nearly made me collapse. Pete glared, but Jake helped him up. "We're leaving, Pete," Jake said, glancing at Diego. "I can live with this mistake." As they rode off, I slumped against thunder. Elena called from the wagon. "Miguel, we need to go now." Miguel looked at me, then at his son. "Help me get him in the wagon," he said to his mother. "He's coming with us. Diego needs that money." They moved me to the wagon bed, Diego beside me. As Elena drove, I felt something I hadn't in years. Not forgiveness, but a chance to die for something worthwhile. The wagon rattled toward Millbrook, Diego's shallow breaths matching my own. I pulled out a pouch of laudanum pills from Doc Harper, strong enough to slow a heart. "Elena," I said weakly, "stop the wagon." "We can't stop," she cried. "That's why we need to." I explained the pills could slow Diego's heart, buy him time. Miguel hesitated, but Elena saw the boy's purple lips and nodded. We dissolved a quarter pill in water, feeding it to Diego with agonizing care. Within minutes, his breathing steadied, not better, but not worse. As we rolled on, hoofbeats sounded again. 6 riders, led by Pete Morrison, fresh and furious. "Elena," I said, "we've got company." She saw the dust cloud and tightened her grip on the reins. "How long?" 10 minutes, maybe less." Miguel spurred his horse closer. "We can't outrun them." "Then someone stays behind," I said, "and I'm already dying." I climbed out, my gun heavy with only 4 bullets left. Elena grabbed her husband's rifle, refusing to run. Miguel joined us, forming a triangle around the wagon. Pete and his gang stopped 50 yards off. "Crow!" Pete shouted, his wounded arm in a sling. "Time to pay up." "The only thing I owe you is a bullet," I called back. The shooting started. My first shot dropped a rider, but the second went wide as pain overwhelmed me. Elena's rifle took another, but we were outmatched. Then, a rifle shot from behind Pete's gang. Jake Morrison, with 2 strangers, had returned. The gang scattered, and when the dust settled, Pete lay dead. I collapsed against the wagon, Diego's steady breathing, my only anchor. "Miguel," I gasped, "my saddlebags. $4,000. Get your boy to that doctor." As Miguel retrieved the money, I closed my eyes. For the first time in 37 years, I felt peace. The desert sun climbed, but I wasn't running anymore. Diego would live, and that was enough. The desert stretched endless before me, a cruel mirror to the emptiness I'd carried since I traded cattle ranching for a life of blood and bullets. My name's Silas Crow, and I was dying. A bullet from the Morrison gang's best shooter burning a hole in my chest. Each step through the sand was a battle, my blood seeping into the dust, my vision fading like a sunset over the plains. I'd always figured I'd go out like this, alone, with only my regrets for company. But then that cry came, a baby's wail, sharp as a spur, cutting through the silence of the dawn. It wasn't right, not out here, where nothing but scorpions and vultures thrive. I thought it was my mind, unraveling as death closed in, but it came again, desperate, pulling me forward like a lasso around my heart. I stumbled around a clutch of weathered rocks, my boots scraping the hard pan, and there it was, a pine coffin, small as a child's, sitting in the middle of this god-forsaken wasteland. The crying was louder now, unmistakable, coming from inside. My knees gave out, and I dropped beside it, the pain in my chest drowned by the shock. A coffin? For a baby? My hands, rough from years of roping steers and pulling triggers, shook as I lifted the lid. Inside was a boy, maybe 6 months old, wrapped in a tattered blanket. His face was red, his tiny fists flailing, but he was alive, fighting with a strength I'd seen in calves struggling against a storm. His dark eyes met mine, and for a moment, the crying stopped. Those eyes, they weren't just a child's. They were deep, like they knew the weight of the world I had carried for 37 years. Then I saw it, carved into the coffin's lid in crude, deliberate letters. Silas Crow. My name. The sight hit me like a stampede, chilling my blood despite the desert heat. Someone had planned this, known I'd be here, bleeding out on this trail after tangling with the Morrison gang. They wanted me to find this boy, to face my name etched in wood meant for the dead. My heart, battered as it was, pounded with a mix of fear and fury. Who would do this? Who would use a child as bait in a game this cruel? I lifted the boy from the coffin, his small body lighter than a newborn calf. His fingers grabbed at my vest, and something inside me cracked, not from the bullet, but from a feeling I hadn't known since I drove herds across the open range, hope. I'd never held a child before, never thought I deserved to. My hands had branded cattle, roped strays, and spilled blood across 3 territories. But this boy, his cries weakening, needed me, and I, with maybe hours left to live, needed him too. He was a chance, maybe my last, to do something that wasn't stained with sin. As I cradled him against my chest, his warmth seeped through my blood-soaked shirt, a stark contrast to the cold spreading through me. Thunder, my horse, stood 30 yards off, ears twitching, loyal despite the chaos. I staggered toward him, the boy in my left arm, each step a knife in my ribs. I managed to pull myself into the saddle, the effort nearly sending me into darkness. The boy stayed quiet now, his eyes fixed on me like he was judging whether I was worth his trust. I wasn't sure myself, but I knew one thing. Someone had set this trap, and they weren't done with me yet. The sun climbed higher, baking the desert, and I knew we couldn't stay. Without water, the boy wouldn't last 2 hours. I had maybe 4, less with the weight of him in my arms. Millbrook was too far, 8 miles east, but the old Hendricks place, abandoned since cholera took the family, was closer, maybe a mile. If I could get there, I might find supplies, maybe answers. As thunder plodded forward, the boy made soft sounds, hungry, scared. I looked down at him, his tiny chest struggling, and it hit me like a hoof to the gut. This wasn't just a trap for me, it was for him too. Someone had left him to die, knowing I'd find him, knowing I'd have no choice but to act. My vision blurred, blood loss catching up, but I pressed on, my mind racing. Who knew my route? Who knew I'd be riding this trail after the Morrison fight? The answer came with the sight of smoke rising, not from the Hendricks place but nearby. Someone was waiting. My hand moved to my gun, but the pain stopped me cold. If this was a trap, I was riding into it, a dying man with a child who didn't deserve to be part of my reckoning. As thunder crested a hill, I saw her, a woman in a faded blue dress, tending a fire outside the Hendricks cabin. Elena Vasquez. Her face was older now, carved with grief, but I'd know it anywhere. 2 years ago, in Tombstone, I'd killed her husband, Carlos, over a card game gone wrong, $20 and a cheating hand. I knew he was desperate, trying to feed his family, but my pride and my gun had spoken louder. Elena had knelt over his body, swearing vengeance, promising I'd pay for leaving her children fatherless. Now she was here, with a fire burning and supplies laid out like she'd been expecting me. "Silas Crow," she said, her voice sharp as a blade. "Right on time." "Elena," I croaked, my throat dry as the dust. "You left the baby." "My grandson," she said, her eyes hard but her voice cracking. "Miguel's boy, Diego, born 3 months ago." The pieces fell into place like a herd settling into a corral. Miguel, her son, the hothead who'd ridden with the Morrison gang, the one who'd shot me this morning. "Your boy tried to kill me," I said, holding Diego tighter. "And you killed his father. Seems fair." She stepped closer, her hand slipping behind her back. I knew what was coming. A gun, a knife, something to end me. "The coffin," I said, my voice steady despite the pain. "You carved my name in it." "Where dead men belong," she said, her words dripping with hate. "Miguel couldn't finish you, so I made sure you'd find Diego. I wanted you to choose. Die alone or die knowing you saved a child whose father you took." Diego stirred, his tiny fingers clutching my vest. For a moment, Elena's eyes softened, a grandmother's love breaking through her vengeance. "But there's more," she said, her hand still hidden. "Diego's sick. Heart condition. Needs surgery we can't afford. More money than we'll ever see." The truth hit harder than the bullet in my chest. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about desperation, a family fighting for their own. "You want my money," I said. "I want you dead," she snapped. "But I'll take your $2,000 bounty and whatever's in your saddlebags." Diego's breathing grew shallow, his lips tinged blue. I felt a panic I hadn't known since a stampede nearly took my herd years ago. "You can have it all," I said, my voice softer than it had been in years. "But let me get him to a doctor first." Her hand emerged, holding an old Navy Colt. "You think I trust a killer like you?" "I'm dying," I said, nodding at the blood soaking my shirt. 2 hours, maybe 3, but Diego could live if we move now. Her gun wavered, her eyes torn between hate and love. Diego's breathing hitched, and I felt my own heart stutter, not from the wound, but from the weight of this moment. I'd taken lives, ended futures, but this boy could be my redemption. Millbrook, I said. Doc Harper can stabilize him. Then Phoenix for the surgery. Miguel's in Millbrook, she said, her voice low. He'll kill you on sight. Then ride with us, I said. Keep him from shooting me long enough to save your grandson. She laughed, bitter and broken. Save the man who killed my husband? Save Diego. Her gun lowered, but the fire in her eyes didn't fade. Diego's breathing grew weaker, and I knew we were out of time. Elena was a woman torn, her vengeance a noose around her heart, but her love for Diego was stronger. She'd set this trap to destroy me, but now we were bound by a child's life, and I'd be damned if I let him die in this desert. The desert was a furnace, the sun scorching my blood-soaked shirt as I held Diego close, his tiny body trembling against me. I'm Silas Crow, once a cattle rancher who knew the rhythm of the plains, now a gunslinger with a bullet in my chest and a baby in my arms. The Morrison gang had done their work, leaving me to bleed out on this lonely trail, but finding Diego in that coffin, my name carved into the wood, changed everything. He was my last chance, maybe my only chance, to do something right in a life stained with wrong. We were at the Hendricks place, an abandoned homestead rotting under the desert sky. Elena Vasquez stood before me, her faded blue dress a stark contrast to the fire in her eyes. She'd set this trap, using her grandson Diego as bait to draw me in, to make me pay for killing her husband, Carlos, 2 years ago. But Diego's heart condition, his shallow breaths, and blue-tinged lips had shifted the game. She wanted my blood, but she needed my money. $4,000 in my saddlebags to save her boy. I was willing to give it, but time was running out for both of us. Then I heard hoofbeats, hard and fast, like a stampede bearing down. 3 riders crested the ridge, dust swirling like a storm. Miguel Vasquez led them, his face twisted with rage, a mirror of his father's, but younger, fiercer. He was the 3rd shooter from this morning, the one who'd put this bullet in me. Flanking him were Pete and Jake Morrison, outlaws who'd kill for a dime and call it a good day. Elena froze, her voice lost in the thunder of hooves. "Miguel, no!" she shouted, but he didn't hear or didn't care. I held Diego tighter, his breathing faint but steady, his eyes locked on mine like he knew I was his lifeline. My gun hand itched, but I was too weak to draw fast, and shooting with a baby in my arms was a fool's bet. Miguel's horse skidded to a stop, his revolver already out. "Get away from him, Mama!" he roared, his gun trained on me. "Get away from that baby killer!" "Miguel, stop!" Elena stepped between us, Diego cradled in her arms now. I'd handed him to her, knowing I couldn't fight and protect him at the same time. "He's trying to help." "Help?" Miguel's voice broke, raw with pain. "He killed Papa. He's the reason Diego's dying," Pete Morrison chimed in, his gun steady. "Boy's right. Crow's worth $2,000. We finish him, collect the bounty, everybody wins." "Except Diego," I said, my hands raised, my voice calm despite the fire in my chest. "Your boy needs a doctor in Phoenix. Kill me now. You'll never have enough money to save him." Miguel's gun wavered, his dark eyes, his father's eyes, burning with hate. I knew that look. I'd seen it in men I'd faced down, men I'd killed. But beneath it was something else, something I recognized from my ranching days, the desperation of a man fighting for his own. Miguel was young, maybe 20, but he was a father, and Diego was his world. I'd taken his father, Carlos, over a card game gone sour, and now he stood on the edge of losing his son. I was the monster in his story, but I was also the man holding the key to Diego's survival. Elena clutched Diego, his breathing erratic, his tiny body limp. "Miguel, listen to him," she whispered, tears in her eyes. "Diego's getting worse." The standoff stretched like a taut rope, every second pulling Diego closer to death. Pete spat in the dust. "Enough talk. We came for a bounty, not a sob story." But Jake Morrison was watching Diego, his hard face softening. "Pete," he said, "that baby looks real sick." "So what?" Pete snapped. "I got a kid too," Jake said, his voice low, like a confession. "Back in Colorado." I seized the moment, my voice steady despite the blood seeping from my wound. Then you know what it's like, Jake. Watching your child suffer, helpless to stop it. Pete's patience snapped like a dry branch. Jake, what's wrong with you? His gun swung toward his cousin, but Jake was faster. A shot rang out, and Pete spun to the ground, clutching his shoulder, cursing loud enough to wake the dead. I got a kid too, Jake repeated, his gun still smoking. Miguel's paralysis broke. He holstered his weapon and took Diego from Elena, his hands shaking. He's still breathing, he said, his voice cracking. Barely. Elena ran for the wagon behind the cabin. It's ready, she called. But Pete, despite his wound, reached for his gun with his good hand. I drew mine, the effort nearly dropping me, and fired a shot into the dirt near him. Next one won't miss, I said, my vision swimming. Jake helped Pete up. We're leaving, Pete, he said, glancing at Diego. I can live with this mistake. As they rode off, I slumped against thunder, my strength fading. Elena called from the wagon. Miguel, we need to go now. Miguel looked at me, then at his son. The hate in his eyes was still there, but it was overshadowed by something stronger. Love. Help me get him in the wagon, he said to his mother. He's coming with us. Diego needs that money. They lifted me into the wagon bed, Diego beside me. As Elena drove, Miguel rode alongside, his gun ready for trouble. I looked at him, this boy I'd wronged, now fighting for his son's life. You're a better man than your father, I said, my voice weak. He was desperate. You're determined. Miguel's jaw tightened, but he didn't reply. He didn't need to. His choice was clear. His son came first, even if it meant riding with the man who'd killed his father. Diego's breathing was shallow, but he was fighting, just like his father. And for the first time, I felt a flicker of hope that we might make it to Millbrook, that this boy might live, and that maybe, just maybe, I could leave something good behind in this cruel world. The desert was a merciless beast, its heat searing my skin, its silence mocking my fading strength. I'm Silas Crow, once a cattle rancher who drove herds across these plains, now a gunslinger with a bullet in my chest, bleeding out beside a wagon carrying a dying baby. Diego, the child I'd found in a coffin carved with my name, lay beside me, his breath shallow but steady from the laudanum I'd given him. Elena Vasquez drove the wagon, her hands gripping the reins like they were her last hold on hope. Miguel, her son, rode alongside, his eyes scanning the horizon for trouble. We were headed to Millbrook, 3 miles away, where Doc Harper might stabilize Diego long enough to reach a surgeon in Phoenix. But the desert wasn't done with us yet. The Hendricks place, a rotting homestead abandoned to cholera, faded behind us. Elena's trap, using Diego to lure me into her vengeance for her husband's death, had backfired. Her grandson's heart condition forced us to unite, but the Morrison gang, led by Pete, was closing in. I heard hoofbeats, a thunder like a stampede, and forced myself to sit up, pain ripping through me. Elena, I rasped, we've got company. She glanced back, her face pale as the dust cloud rose. How long? 10 minutes, maybe less. 6 riders appeared, Pete Morrison at the front, his wounded arm slung, but his eyes burning with greed. He'd rounded up every gun for hire in the territory, chasing the $2,000 bounty on my head. Miguel's jaw tightened, his gun ready. We can't outrun them, he said. I knew what had to be done. I was dying anyway, my life leaking into the sand. Stop the wagon, I said, my voice steady despite the pain. Elena's eyes widened. We can't stop. Here, we've got cover, I said. Open ground. They'll cut us down. She pulled the reins, the horses snorting. I climbed out, my legs barely holding, my gun heavy with 4 bullets left. Elena grabbed her husband's rifle, her voice low. Carlos died for our family. I'll do the same. Miguel joined us, forming a triangle around the wagon. Me at the bed, him at the wheel, Elena by the barrel, Diego in her arms. The riders stopped 50 yards off, out of pistol range. Pete's voice rang out. Crow, time to pay up! The only thing I owe you is a bullet, I shouted, my strength fading but my will iron. Pete laughed, his men fanning out. 6 against 3, I like those odds. I noticed Jake Morrison was missing. Had he turned, like he'd hinted? Diego stirred, his soft sound cutting through the tension. Pete drew, and the desert erupted. My first shot dropped a rider. My second went wide as pain flared. Elena's rifle took another. Miguel's missed, but spooked a horse. We were losing, my vision blurring, Pete's bullet splintering wood near my head, then a rifle cracked from behind Pete's gang. One fell, and chaos broke. Jake Morrison appeared, two strangers at his side, their guns blazing. Pete's men scattered, caught in a crossfire. I fired my last bullets, grazing one rider. Pete fell, face down in the sand, his greed silenced. Jake approached, looking at his cousin's body. "Thought this wasn't over," he said. I was wrong. I collapsed against the wagon, Diego's steady breaths my anchor. "Miguel," I gasped. "My saddlebags. $4,000. Get him to the doctor." Miguel retrieved the money, his eyes meeting mine, not with hate, but resolve. The desert had tested us, its heat and silence stripping us to our cores. We'd fought not for pride or vengeance, but for a child's life. As Elena drove on, I felt the weight of my sins lift, replaced by a flicker of hope. Diego would live, and that was enough. The desert stretched around me, a cruel expanse of sand and heat, its silence broken by the creak of wagon wheels and Diego's faint breaths. I'm Silas Crow, a man who once drove cattle under wide skies, now a gunslinger with a bullet in my chest, my life slipping away beside a child fighting for his. The Hendricks place was behind us, the dust of our battle with the Morrison gang settling. I'd found Diego in a coffin with my name, a trap set by Elena Vasquez to avenge her husband Carlos, whom I'd killed. But Diego's failing heart had bound us, forcing us to choose life over hate. We raced for Millbrook, 3 miles off, where Doc Harper might save Diego. Elena drove, her hands steady, her eyes haunted by grief and hope. Miguel rode beside us, his gun ready, his heart torn between vengeance and his son. Diego lay beside me, his breathing steadier from the laudanum, but fragile, like a calf caught in a blizzard. My own time was short, but I'd made my peace. This boy was my chance to leave something good in a world I'd bloodied. The coffin was a shadow in my mind, my name carved into it, a reckoning for every life I'd taken. I'd been a rancher once, guiding herds through storms, saving strays. But pride and a quick trigger turned me into a killer. Carlos's death over a $20 card game was my deepest regret. Now, Diego's life offered a chance to balance the scales, to give instead of take. Elena's vengeance had burned for years, but Diego's illness forced her to face a harder truth. Hate wouldn't save her grandson. She'd planned to kill me, take my $4,000 and bounty to pay for his surgery. But when Diego's lips turned blue, she'd lowered her gun, love winning over hate. I saw it in her eyes as she drove, a grandmother fighting for her boy, like I'd fought for my herd. Miguel was a storm, his rage at me a force as wild as a stampede. He'd shot me, driven by his father's death, but Diego changed him. When he held his son, his hands shook with love, not hate. He rode with me, the man he despised, to save his boy, a courage I hadn't had when I killed Carlos. The desert was our crucible, its heat stripping us bare. The coffin symbolized my death, my sins. Diego was life, his fight pulling us through the dust. As we neared Millbrook, I pulled out my pouch. "Miguel," I whispered, $4,000. Get him to Phoenix." He took it, his eyes softening. Elena glanced back, her resolve unbreakable. "We'll make it," she said. The sun climbed, but I wasn't afraid. I'd run from my scenes too long. Now, with Diego's life in the balance, I was where I needed to be. I closed my eyes, the wagon's creak fading, and felt peace, like watching my herd graze at dawn. Diego would live, and that was my redemption, carved in a child's heart.